Alright, so we only have a single release for this week. It's a smaller week, but that's going to be a good thing. I mean, it's not as entertaining for y'all, but, you know, it was a very busy week. And I think it's because, as I mentioned last week, I suspected that one of the boxes that arrived was actually that week's releases, which meant they arrived actually a day early, which is pretty unusual, because I actually record these the day before I actually post this. I don't know if I'll do that or not. It just occurred to me that I can probably get this video to y'all. Anyway, this is Turn a Gundam. Although I think this is a movie collection on Blu-ray. I really should watch it to get a better idea of what exactly it is. It's my general understanding that there's kind of different countries with different Gundams or something. Maybe a battle. Well, I don't know if this is a movie version or if this is the movies. I can't even read that down there. Maybe y'all can. The moon something. Moon battlefield? Moonspeak. Is this the thing that Moonspeak is from? Or is that from something else? Anyways, it's not much, but here's this week's anime collection edition. Alright, and now we're at the part where I talk about the stuff I watched, and it's not a whole lot of stuff, and I'll talk about that why a little bit. But other stuff I did watch. Well, you know, I got my list over there. I did watch Spy Family episode 7, and it was still great. Actually, maybe I can't really put off talking about why I only watched. So basically, my brother had a wedding. You're like, okay, it's your brother. And, hey, my brother and the bride both live, you know, in town. So what's the big deal? Well, the bride's family lives up in Illinois, you know, and I'm down here in Texas. And so, okay, there needs to be traveling involved. And I'm not a big fan of airplanes, airports, and their complicated systems. My parents also are not. They're much bigger fans of traveling by car. And in particular, going super, do it all in one shot. The only problem was, you know, they were kind of not sure if some of their cars were as road prepared. And they suggested, oh, hey, Giga, is there any chance we could use your car to drive up there? And I was like, funny you should ask that. I was kind of wondering, could I get somebody to drive me up there in my car? And that was the perfect thing. So it basically meant that not only was I going up there, but I was traveling there early as if I was, you know, not on my own and just a one-off, you know. And spending the time that it would take to travel by car and not just car to airport to car and then reverse when it's time to go back home. So like and there's a lot of reasons it was good that we did that, but it basically meant that a lot of this past week was spent either preparing for that trip or being on that trip. And while I was actually there, I did fire up my laptop to watch 2 episodes of anime, but I was just there was just so much stuff and so little energy that, like, the first night after we successfully got there, and we left here, the Austin, Texas area at around 2 p.m. and we showed up at 8 a.m. ish, you know, the next morning. So, you know, really driving through. And, you know, the hotel let us check in 7 hours early. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 7 hours early. And so, you know, like, we took a nap and then we got to join people for some slight pre-wedding stuff that evening. And, you know, for all of that stuff, it was mostly just recovering from the trip, little naps, some investigation of the area sort of stuff. Like there's a restaurant up there called New News, a very new one. This isn't like in the area. This is just a crepe cafe. Well, crepe and slots, but the slots weren't there, so it was really neat to kind of go in there and see where they were going to set up the slots. I'm just kind of a big enjoyer of watching things that are being constructed, I guess. So, that was kind of neat. And while it wasn't very construction-y, it was still a room that was empty that had stuff set up so that slots could be installed. Apparently it's, I think, a state-regulated gambling sort of thing. And it's very interesting because I don't think Texas does that, so it was just a, very different thing between the two. But, we spent some time there just chatting with the guy, mostly about Austin, because he was kind of curious about the Austin area, maybe considering moving down here. So, conversations about that. But the crepes, they were pretty nice. I just had a simple strawberry crepe with whipped cream on it. But, yeah, it was nice. Anyways, things like that. And going to bed that night, I had a migraine, so I wasn't going to be watching any anime because I was just completely exhausted. And the next night, I think I only watched one thing. I'm trying to remember what... Oh, yeah, of course, because we had the rehearsal, and I had to be a part of the rehearsal because I was a groomsman. You think, oh, yes, you're a brother, of course you are. But the truth of the matter is, usually he tries to construct his groomsmen around his closer friends he's actually friends with. Whereas I, as a brother, am more of just a solid place for him to, lean on, fall back to. And it's actually pretty great because when I talked to him about, my thoughts regarding being I think a secondary or tertiary backup groomsman, I thought it was actually very appropriate just because of what I thought I represented, that area of stability. And their thank you letter to me actually said the same thing. And this was written before I talked to my brother about that. So it's just pretty great to be on the same wavelength about that sort of stuff. So that's a whole lot of stuff. It basically meant that we had late nights, migraine nights, etc., driving, not a lot of energy to do a whole lot of stuff for a whole lot of it, just barely trying to get through. You're like, oh, what about downtime? Well, a lot of that was filled up also with, like driving to and from the airport, which was an hour away. And I have to say, O'Hare seems like a motherfucking nightmare. Not only just from what I experienced, but from what other people experienced. Midway seems a lot nicer. But I digress. The point is, okay, so one episode I did watch Spy Family, and since I'm sharing the apartment room with my parents, I kind of wanted to do that to reduce the strain on finding enough rooms for everybody. If that's one less room, I'm willing to bunk up with my parents, and at the same time it's really good because since me and my parents are all the car, it kind of means we coordinate the car and it's not disjointed, and I think that worked out really well. So, all of that's relevant because Spy Family Episode 7 meant that I watched it on the laptop after midnight. Dad's still awake. Unless he was trying to go to sleep, and then Mom was the one who was still awake. No, which nights were each of those? I don't remember. But the point is, I'm still on the laptop listening to it with headphones on, and I couldn't help but giggle at a part of the episode. So, I don't think that disturbed the parents at all. They didn't mention or comment anything about it, but it still happened once. The episode was entertaining. Again, a part of it got that sort of a giggle out of me. And I don't think the parents noticed, but I did get ever so slightly teary-eyed. Not that I think it did anything too teary-eyed, but just rather that the show continues to be wholesome and funny and just really great, well thought out. Good fucking job, Spy Family. I'm still enjoying this show a lot. The other thing I watched while on the trip was Skeleton Knight Episode 7. What all happened? That. I think some things are happening in it, and I'm trying to think what I could comment on without spoiling. It's not doing anything that's like, oh my god, world-shattering revelations, but it's still doing little things to it that are like, this is really nice. It's kind of suggesting, you know, that this bigger conspiracy, but not like a, more just the events happening around them sort of conspiracy sort of thing. It's still staying low-key. And it also had this interaction that I'm like, I wonder how this is going to turn out. And it turned out very differently than I expected. In a way where I kind of wish I had another episode. Oh, yeah, I was just thinking. And then the next anime I'm going to talk about is similar to that as well. So, Trapped in a dating sim, the world of Otome games is tough for mobs. So I think last week I hadn't watched episode 7. Because according to my notes, I watched episode 7 the day before I left on the trip, which would have been after I recorded the video for last week. And I watched episode 8 earlier today. So, oh, that's a lot of comments. So let's see. How well can I remember the stuff that happened before I left on the trip versus what happened now? I do know that the end of the 8th episode, I kind of felt like I would prefer if episode 9 were available. There's stuff happening that's maybe not the most awesome stuff I've described in this show, but it's also kind of I want to see where this goes next because I feel like this can be resolved in a good way, and I'm waiting to see how it does. It's got some drama stuff going on. It's got some characters realizing sort of stuff that's making the character interactions a little more interesting, although that one bitch, she's supposed to be someone we really hate, and she's, continuing to be grating in that regard. But, I'm wondering how it's all going to resolve all this stuff. I guess 7 and 8 feel like there's random crazy stuff that happened in them, but at the same time I feel like that's kind of in line with the anime, because it established that the video game that the anime is based on, and not a real life video game, but a video game within the anime itself, the anime multiverse, I guess, for lack of better words, the game was just all over the place in terms of stuff it had in it, and it feels like these 2 episodes encompass some of those concepts, but it's also kind of nodding towards the concept that it's set up as working against the basic premise, which is, our main character sees himself as a mob character, but because his interactions are more influential, he's less of a mob character, which, is kind of what you would want from the show, I guess. I mean, it's kind of tricky because you can probably have a show where a person is actually a background mob character, and you could do it from that. I think like an example of a video game that kind of does the concept really well is Viscera Cleanup Detail. I don't even know if that's the right first word, but the basic idea is you're playing the guys who have to clean up after the action hero rocked his way through the level or something like that. And that's just kind of a funny, that's kind of a video game as the mob character sort of thing. And this show could have been like that, but it's going for a different approach, and it's not bad in what it's doing, but it's the butt stuff. Alright. So, I would think watching episode 9 would be great. It could be trying to set up stuff for where it wants to go near the end, because I'm not sure. I don't have a good feeling for the pacing. I say that like I have a good feeling for the pacing of the other 2 things I talked about, and I don't really feel like it. So, I don't know. As for what I plan to do this next week, well, obviously since I've been home for, I keep thinking 24 hours, but actually it's only been not quite 12 hours. That may seem like a lot, but the truth of the matter is I'm, just kind of still getting back. And I knew it would take at least a day, although I thought the day of getting back would started later, so my PTO goes through the end of tomorrow, so I'm still going to take tomorrow off. But maybe I'll catch up on stuff, watch stuff. I don't know. I'll have to figure it out because, you know, I didn't have a weekend to myself, so this is kind of my weekend, which is very nice. Timing's weird for a weekend, but still nice. Anything else worth talking about? St. Louis was kind of confusing signage on the way up. On the way back, I think we were using Google Maps and not as dependent on the signs, but it was still but the arch was there. If you're curious about whether or not we stopped at any Buc-ee's, we did not. I don't think the parents' goals when traveling by car like that is landmarks or landmark gas stations or anything like that. Usually it's about making as much distance as they can and, you know, gassing up at places where they get good deals on gas. Which is not the way I think about gassing up, but it's interesting. Anything about Chicago? Again, O'Hare. It sounds like if you can possibly help it, try not to go there. The main problem I think people ran into that was just the most insufferable thing was, for some reason, all the car rental stuff was set up to go through a single company. There were a bunch of other rental kiosks that had absolutely no line, and one which had a 2-hour line, which makes me think that something in the system was directing people only to that one. And at the same time, it sounded like that not only was it a couple hours, but even though people had certain cars reserved, their cars weren't there, and there was weird estimates for when they would have their cars, and, oh, but instead we're going to upcharge you to, if you want to get out of here an hour earlier. It sounds very scammy to me. It sounded very scammy to the people who experienced it. That sounded very insufferable. And that's without even getting out into traffic and dealing with all the shenanigans of the way everything is built around there. And oh my god. Comparatively speaking, Midway was just straightforward to drop Aunt Kathy off at. It was nice. Alright, obviously my energy level's starting to go down, mostly because I got my Dead by Daylighting in and catching up on social groups related to that. So, yeah, sorry today's update had to be small. Y'all, have a nice week.